Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most mind-bending mysteries in the United States, Skinwalker Ranch. This place has been freaking people out for decades, and for good reason. From bizarre creatures to unexplainable lights in the sky, this remote patch of land in Utah is like a magnet for the weird. So, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's trace this story from its ancient roots to the present day. Oh, and if you're feeling lucky, hit that like and subscribe button before we wrap up. It might just ward off any bad vibes from this tale. Picture this. The northeastern corner of Utah, where rugged mountains hug wide, dusty plains, and sparse forests stretch out as far as the eye can see. This is the Uinta Basin, a place that's as beautiful as it is haunting. For centuries, locals have whispered about strange things happening here, things that don't just defy logic but seem to laugh in its face. We're talking glowing orbs drifting silently through the night, creatures that look like they crawled out of a nightmare, and eerie sounds that seem to come from deep underground. Informal surveys say up to 3/4 of the folks living in this area have seen something they can't explain. For them, the weird is just part of the deal. And at the heart of all this strangeness, Skinwalker Ranch. This 480-acre plot of land has a reputation that sends chills down the spine. Locals call it cursed, tied to ancient Navajo legends about skinwalkers, malevolent shapeshifters said to take on animal forms to stalk and terrorize people. The story goes that long ago, after a bitter conflict, the Navajo placed a curse on this land as payback against the Ute tribe. The Ute believe this ranch sits right on the path of the Skinwalker, a kind of supernatural highway where shadowy beings slip between worlds. Yeah, it's the stuff of nightmares. Let's fast forward to 1994. Terry and Gwen Sherman, a couple looking for a fresh start, signed the papers to buy this ranch. They thought they were getting a slice of paradise, a quiet place to raise cattle and build a life. But from the moment they rolled up, things got weird, like really weird. On their first day, while they were still unpacking, a massive creature strolled out of the fields toward them. At first, Terry thought it was a wolf, but as it got closer, he realized this thing was huge, 3 times the size of any wolf he'd ever seen. Its deep blue eyes seemed to stare right through him, and it moved with this eerie calm. Terry's dad even reached out and petted its damp fur, and the creature didn't flinch. But then, out of nowhere, it lunged at a calf in a pen, clamping its jaws around the poor thing's head and trying to drag it off. Terry freaked out. He grabbed a club, then a .357 Magnum, and started firing at point-blank range. But here's the kicker. The bullets didn't do a thing. It was like shooting at a ghost. Finally, after grabbing a high-powered rifle and unloading more rounds, the creature just walked away. It left behind a chunk of flesh that smelled like it had been rotting for days. What was that thing? The Shermans had no clue, but it was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, the ranch turned into a house of horrors. Everyday stuff like grocery bags, towels, even toothbrushes would vanish and then pop up in the weirdest places. One time, Gwen stepped out of the bathroom for a minute, came back, and the towel was gone. Hours later, she found it in the middle of the staircase. Another time, Terry lost a 70-pound soil probe, only to find it later stuck high up in a tree 60 feet off the ground. I mean, come on, how does that even happen? At first, they thought they were losing it, but the evidence was piling up. Something was messing with them. Then there were the lights. At night, flickering glows would dance along the fence line. Glowing objects floated silently across the sky, and mechanical hums echoed from somewhere deep underground. Their cattle started disappearing. Some were found later, but not in one piece. It was like the ranch was playing a sick game with them. The final straw came one night when a small, tennis ball-sized blue orb appeared near the woods, humming like it was alive. The family's 3 hunting dogs took off after it. Terry figured they'd be fine, but the next morning, he and his son found nothing but 3 smoldering piles of ash where the dogs had been. That's when the Shermans knew they were in over their heads. Living on Skinwalker Ranch was like being trapped in a horror movie. The family was losing cattle left and right, over a dozen, worth tens of thousands of dollars. The kids' grades started slipping. Gwen lost her job at the bank because she was too exhausted to function, and the whole family ended up sleeping in one room just to feel safe. But safety was an illusion. The strange events never let up, and by 1996, the Shermans were at their breaking point. Enter Robert Bigelow, a billionaire with a serious curiosity about the unexplained. He'd made his fortune in real estate, but had a passion for mysteries that science couldn't crack. When he read about the Shermans' ordeal in a news article, he didn't hesitate. He bought the entire ranch and set up the National Institute for Discovery Science, or an IDS, a team of top-notch scientists, including physicists, biologists, psychologists, and even ex-military. These weren't folks who believed in ghost stories. They were all about hard data and rational explanations. The NEEDS team hit the ground running, turning the ranch into a high-tech lab. They set up observation towers, infrared cameras, and round-the-clock surveillance. They tested soil, water, air, everything. They measured electromagnetic waves, infrasound, magnetic fields, you name it. Their goal, figure out what was behind the Shermans' nightmares. But what they found only deepened the mystery. One night, 4 of Terry's massive bulls vanished from a locked pen. The gates were still secure, no signs of a break-in. After hours of searching, the team found all 4 crammed inside an old trailer. Its door locked and covered in cobwebs. No one could explain how those bulls got in there. Another time, researchers spotted a strange light hovering over the field. Through infrared binoculars, they saw something that looked like a portal opening, and a pitch-black faceless figure crawled out and slithered across the ground like it was scoping the place out. The team also picked up weird subterranean noises, musky odors, and wild swings in magnetic fields. They saw a triangular craft gliding silently through the sky, almost like they knew they were being watched and dodged the cameras on purpose. And their high-tech gear, it kept failing at the worst possible moments, right when something bizarre was happening. After months of digging, the NIDS team had to face a tough truth. Something seriously strange was going on at Skinwalker Ranch, and whatever it was, it didn't want to be caught. The deeper they looked, the more questions they had and the fewer answers. Before the Shermans ever set foot on Skinwalker Ranch, the land had a history that was anything but normal. The previous owners, Kenneth and Edith Myers, lived there for nearly 60 years, from the 1930s to the 1990s. On the surface, they never said a peep about anything strange. But if you talk to their neighbors, friends, or old ranch hands, you get a different story, one that's just as unsettling as what the Shermans went through. Let us go back to the winter of 1948. A massive snowstorm was burying the ranch in white, and Kenneth Myers heard a knock at the door. He stepped outside and saw a guy standing about 10 feet away, dressed in a long black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. The stranger claimed he was from the sheriff's office, just checking on the family during the blizzard. Kenneth turned to invite him in for coffee, but when he looked back, the guy was gone. No trace, except for footprints in the snow that led to the front gate and then just stopped. Kenneth stood there staring into the fog and muttered to himself, "Dear God, this land is cursed." That wasn't an isolated incident. The Myers family dealt with their share of weirdness, even if they kept it quiet. In 1975, a young ranch hand named Jimmy Spears was fixing a fence on the far edge of the property when he vanished. 3 days later, he turned up in a panic, with no memory of what happened. All he could recall was working in the early afternoon, then waking up behind an abandoned house on the ranch, in some kind of trance. Jimmy quit soon after, saying he kept having nightmares about being buried alive under the floorboards of that house like it was a memory, not just a dream. Then there's the story of 2 young women from the Myers family. One night around 11 p.m., they were driving back to the ranch when they noticed flashing red and blue lights tailing them, like a police car. Next thing they knew, it was daylight. They woke up inside their car, parked on top of a Messiah flat-topped rock formation with no roads leading up to it. No way a car could have gotten there on its own. It took a 6-hour tow operation to get the vehicle down, and neither woman could remember how they ended up there. It's like time just skipped. Even local law enforcement wasn't immune to the ranch's strangeness. A deputy sheriff named Chris Porrett, who often responded to calls about missing livestock, once found 2 dead cattle near the main house. These weren't just dead, they'd been carved up with surgical precision, their reproductive organs removed and stacked neatly nearby. Nearby, he noticed a 23-foot-long patch of flattened grass, like something cigar-shaped had landed there. Another time, 3 calves disappeared, only to be found locked inside a small storage shed, standing motionless until someone splashed water on them. The shed's door was latched shut, covered in cobwebs. No one could figure out how those calves got in there. One of the creepiest stories comes from a Ute boy named Roland. In 1981, he and a friend were hunting near a mesa close to the ranch when a rainstorm hit. They took shelter in an abandoned cabin and started hearing strange noises. Then they saw fresh, human-like footprints in the snow. Out of the shadow stepped an 8-foot-tall figure with the body of a man and the head of a wolf. It growled at them, and the boys, terrified, fired their rifles. The creature bolted into the woods, but Roland said the nightmares didn't stop. For years after, he heard scratching at his windows and faint growls outside his house. Even now, decades later, he says those nightmares still haunt him. As stories about Skinwalker Ranch started spreading beyond the Uinta Basin, people had questions. Was this all a hoax? Some thought the Shermans made it up to jack up the property's value and ditch a bad investment. They'd lost a ton of money on cattle, after all. But that theory falls apart when you look at the bigger picture. Hundreds of independent witnesses, neighbors, ranch hands, even cops reported similar weirdness, and the stories go way back, long before the Shermans ever showed up. The local Navajo and Ute tribes have been talking about skinwalkers and cursed land for generations, tied to an ancient conflict that supposedly left supernatural beings roaming the area. But folklore alone can't explain everything. The glowing orbs, the triangular craft, the objects and animals vanishing and reappearing like they were teleported. It's hard to pin that on just old legends. So, some folks started wondering, what if this is something bigger? What if Skinwalker Ranch is a testing ground for secret government tech? Terry Sherman himself wondered if his family had been guinea pigs in some classified experiment. It's not a crazy thought remote, isolated, and already steeped in mystery. The ranch would be a perfect spot for something like that, but there's no hard evidence to back it up, just speculation. When Robert Bigelow sold the ranch in 2016, a lot of people thought that was the end of the story. After nearly a decade of NIDS poking around with their fancy equipment, they still didn't have solid answers. The weirdness didn't stop either. If anything, it seemed to ramp up. But here's where things get really interesting. Some researchers started to notice something. Skinwalker Ranch might not be one. All over the world, places like the Amazon rainforest, the Siberian plains, the Andes Mountains, the high plateaus of Tibet, there are reports of similar hotspots. These are places where reality seems to bend, where time, space, and perception get one. Scientists are starting to call these reality leak zones, where our dimension might be overlapping with something else, something we don't understand. Could Skinwalker Ranch be one of these zones? A place where the fabric of reality is just a little thinner. It's a wild idea, but it might explain why nothing on this ranch behaves the way it should. From shape-shifting creatures to portals in the sky, it's like the rules of our world don't apply here. So, when Robert Bigelow sold Skinwalker Ranch in 2016, a lot of folks thought the curtain had closed on this saga. NIDS spent years throwing every scientific tool they had at the plate. Sensors, you name it, and still walked away with more questions than answers. But the story didn't end there. The ranch changed hands again. This time to a real estate investor named Brandon Fugel, who wasn't ready to let the mystery die. He assembled a new team, blending scientists, engineers, and even a few security experts to keep poking at the ranch's secrets. Their work has been documented in recent years, and let me tell you, the weirdness hasn't slowed down one bit. One of the first things Fugel's team did was double down on tech. They brought in cutting-edge, gear-think, ground-penetrating radar, advanced electromagnetic sensors, and drones that could map the ranch from every angle. They even drilled into the ground to see if those strange subterranean noises the Shermans and NIDS heard were coming from something physical. Spoiler alert, they found anomalies, but nothing that screamed, here's the answer. One experiment picked up bizarre magnetic spikes in certain spots, like the land itself was pulsing with some kind of energy. Another time, their drones started acting up, flying erratically or just shutting down mid-air, especially over a specific patch of the ranch they now call the Triangle. Yeah, probably not. Then there's the cattle situation. Just like the Shermans, the new team noticed animals acting strange. Some would refuse to go near certain areas, like they could sense something was off. Others turned up dead, with the same surgical precision cuts that Deputy Chris Porrett saw back in the day, organs removed. No blood, no tracks. One chilling incident involved a calf that was found with its legs twisted in ways that defy biology, like something had tried to turn it inside out. The team ran tests, but the results were inconclusive. No toxins, no signs of predators, just a big fat question mark. The skies above the ranch are still putting on a show, too. The team caught footage of glowing orbs and triangular objects moving in ways that don't match any known aircraft. One night, they tracked a bright light that zipped across the sky, stopped on a dime, and then vanished. Their cameras glitched right at the critical moment, because of course they did. Some of these objects seem to react to the team's presence, like they're watching right back. It's the kind of thing that makes you wonder if whatever out there is playing a game of cat and mouse. Now, let's talk about the people on the ground. The team's lead scientist, Dr. Travis Taylor, isn't some wide-eyed believer. He's a physicist with a background in aerospace and defense. He's been open about how Skinwalker Ranch has challenged everything he thought he knew about science. One time, he and his team were out in the field when they felt a sudden, intense cold spot, like stepping into a freezer. Their equipment picked up a drop in temperature and a spike in radiation at the same time. No natural explanation checked out. Another incident had team members reporting headaches and nausea after being near the Triangle area, and medical scans later showed weird inflammation in their butt. Something's going on here. And it's not just in their heads. What's cool about this new phase is how open the team's been. They've shared a ton of their findings through documentaries and interviews, trying to get the public in on the mystery. But even with all this transparency, the core question remains, what the heck is causing this? One theory that gains traction is the reality leak zone idea we touched on in part 2. The thinking is that Skinwalker Ranch might be one of those rare spots on Earth where our reality gets a little porous. Maybe it's a natural phenomena, like a glitch in the fabric of space. Or maybe it's something intelligent, something that knows how to stay one step ahead of our cameras and sensors. This idea isn't just about ranch. Researchers have started connecting the dots to other weird places around the world. There's the Hesteland Valley in Norway, where glowing lights have been baffling scientists for decades. Or the Bermuda Triangle, where ships and planes vanish without a trace. Even closer to home, Places like the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts, cryptids, you name it. What if these spots are all linked? What if they're places where our dimension brushes up against something else, letting weird stuff bleed through? Another angle some folks are exploring is the tech angle. Back in the Sherman's day, Terry wondered if the government was testing something secret on the ranch. That theory is still floating around, especially since some of the objects seen in the sky look suspiciously like advanced drones or aircraft. Could the ranch be a proving ground for classified projects? The US government's been cagey about the UFO Zara UAPs for years, and declassified reports like the Pentagon's 2021 UAP Task Force report only fuel the speculation. But if this is government tech, why the creepy creatures and disappearing objects? It doesn't add up. Then there's the cultural angle. The Navajo and Ute stories about skinwalkers aren't just folklore, they're a living part of these communities' histories. Some tribal members say the ranch's phenomena are tied to that ancient curse, a spiritual residue from a long-ago conflict. Others warn that digging into this stuff literally or figuratively or... The current team's been careful to respect these traditions, consulting with local tribes to make sure they're not crossing any lines, but even they admit that science alone might not crack this case. As of today, Skinwalker Ranch is still a puzzle with no solution. Fugel's team keeps pushing forward, adding more tech and more brain power, but every answer leads to 10 new questions. The ranch doesn't give up its secrets easily. What we do know is that this place challenges everything we think we understand about reality. Is it a portal to another dimension, a hotspot for extraterrestrial activity, a cursed piece of land haunted by ancient spirits, or just a really weird patch of dirt that's been freaking people out for centuries? Maybe it has a bit of all those things or something we haven't even thought of yet. That's the story of Skinwalker Ranch, folks, at least for now. If this tale got your brain spinning or reminded you of some creepy stories from your own neck of the woods, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you want to keep exploring the world's strangest mysteries with us, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you in the next video.